That's right. Let's Talk is... Oh, Stephen. Stephen's got his reading glasses on.
Hey, and this is Let's Talk, getting to the root causes of the important issues of the day. This on-the-air community forum believes your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join today's conversation by calling 415-663-8492.
Or 8317, come to that. We have two lines in the studio. And when you call in, you'll hear a little buzzy noise as I put you in the system. Just hang on until you hear me say, "You're on the air," and then give us any name. And turn down your radio so we don't get all that feedback and echoing. And please, keep the language clean.
How do my friends from
Make
Ohio
it
get
clean English. What's that?
How do my friends from Ohio listen in and the conversation?
How do they listen in?
Yeah.
KWMR.org.
On the
That's
line,
right.
you guys.
Even there.
We want to hear from you from Ohio.
I thought we weren't supposed to mention Sandusky anymore or single it out for special
I
attention.
was just going by the state.
Stephen Hurwitz is here with us in the studio. I'm Paul Raffel, and across from me, the lovely Shelley Rock.
Hello, good morning, Paul.
Hello.
And Stephen.
And Stephen, and please allow me to thank the over 400 donors that helped KWMR reach its $40,000 goal and exceed it by over $2,000.
That's
Wow,
amazing. Thank you.
fantastic.
Very, very generous listeners we have. Thank you to you all, and thank you for putting us over the top of our little show goal last week.
That's right.
Got especially thanks to Hal at Marconi, the Marconi Conference Center in sunny downtown Marshall. So, what are we talking about today, Stephen? This was really your idea.
We're talking
so
about
take
carbon.
it away. It's your show for the next hour.
Oh, goody.
We're talking about carbon and our personal and corporate use of carbon. I guess it's all our use, even when the companies use it. We're talking about our carbon
Isn't it
footprints.
Carbon creation. It's not like we're using What is it?
I think it's
Well, it's carbon dioxide, isn't it, that we're worried about? Too
And
much
methane-
carbon dioxide,
methane too, but
other greenhouse gases.
Yeah, greenhouse gases. I think, we can't live without it. I mean, our lifestyle is really dependent on it. And they are coming up with various mechanisms. They have in the past Kyoto and Paris Accords, neither of which are the United States members of.
Yes, we did not ratify the Kyoto Agreement, and we are going to opt out. We're still in it until just before the election, I think.
Oh, boy.
We are in the Paris Agreement, but not for long. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no. Well,
so what are we worried about?
we're worried about the planet and our carbon usage, and I guess we were going to talk about carbon trading and
Carbon credits.
Carbon credits, cap and trade, all that,
and you can remediation. You can actually give money to ecological programs around the country as a way of offsetting around the world as a way of offsetting carbon.
Let's examine cap and trade, because it's kind of
Let's do that.
complicated. It's a thing that we've all heard about it, but
Can you give
I
a
didn't
sort
really know
of
what
definition of cap and trade?
So certainly in California, we have cap and trade. We've had it since 2012 or 13, I think. In our case, in California's case, the state sets a limit on a cap on how much emissions are released into the atmosphere from industry in California. And I think, I was trying to find this, I think that does not include
Agricultural.
airlines. Oh, it doesn't include agriculture?
I don't know. Does it?
Oh, I think it has to, doesn't it?
Well,
Ooh, maybe not.
Interesting.
Call in if you know, because we really don't know very much about this, just what we've been doing homework on. 415-663-8492.
I think we need a Googler out there to do our Google.
Yeah, or Charles. Charles, call in, won't you? You know all about this stuff. Anyway, so there's a cap set on the total amount of emissions, and shares of that total amount of emissions are sold, auctioned off to industries in California, to companies in California who are emitters, as we all are. I mean, I emit carbon every day, and I use it up too, because I'm a carbon-based life form, but that's by the by. But, so there's a cap on the total amount of emissions. Companies get a certain amount of carbon, we can call them credits, or carbon allowances to make up that cap. So there are industries such as the power industry, power generation, agriculture, steel, concrete, all these heavy manufacturing companies have difficulty meeting that their caps, because they are gross emitters, basically, and it's going to take them a while. The excuse is it's going to take us a while to put different infrastructure in place so that we emit fewer greenhouse gases. So what happens is other companies, other industries that have lower carbon footprints can trade their leftover credits, because some of them are way down, I don't know, I guess the solar panel industry, for example, I don't know, is way down in the carbon emission table. So they can trade their leftover credits that they have sitting around,
the remainder of their allowance,
companies that are greater emitters. So industries can keep on emitting more than their allowance, because others are not, are succeeding in being emitting less than their cap. Now, and there's such a thing as carbon offsets. So, for example, big industry that emits a lot of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases can invest even in other countries, they can invest in schemes such as afforestation. They're planting trees to capture carbon from the air, and that is offset against their emissions. So that's another way that they can still keep producing lots of emissions over the top of their allowance, but that they're doing this good work. They're green. I don't
like the tone of your voice.
Opponents say this is just greenwashing. Charles.
It reminds me of.
But also, there's one more important part to the California scheme, is that it is set up so that they reduce it every year by 3%. The emission cap. So emissions have gone down in California. The state has made, I think, $8 billion since 2013, which is being spent on community programs, public transportation programs, blah, 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 blah. So looked at as a whole, it looks like a good idea.
I think anything that helps is a good idea.
So,
well, does it actually help? That's the question.
Does it help?
Because if it sort of reminds me of that a false sense of security. It's like a false sense of taking care of our environment. If all they have to do is pay somebody, for their overage, they keep producing overage. That's not actually improving the environment.
Well, it's a balance, though, actually.
Well, if taken as a whole, it's a balance. But if you're living next to, for example, the refinery in the East Bay, they're still emitting the same amount I guess. I'm not sure that's true. If you know this, if you know anything about this, give us a call, 415-663-8492. The poorer people, the poorer communities are still affected mostly by heavy industry around them, and so they're not feeling any benefits.
So you're saying the effect on might be worse, although nationally it might be better.
Well, I don't know about nationally. We're not doing anything nationally as far as I can tell.
So you're talking about
you have about
California?
5 states that do have it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And Oregon's wanting to do it, or they already have done it. I'm not sure. Yeah. So I don't know. On a microcosmic level, if you live next door to a heavy polluter, they're still polluting. If you, but so here's, I mean, a lot of the articles online that I've been reading. It's kind of old news. This was from 2016 or so. The greenhouse gas emissions in California fell by 1.5% in 2015. It was supposed to, it's supposed to be 3%. I don't know. That was right after it started. Maybe that's why. Analysts are saying other programs were the main reason for that drop, such as requiring utilities to use solar, wind, and other renewable sources of power in increasing amounts. Prices for carbon emission permits have remained relatively low, and I think that's still true today. So there's really not much of a financial incentive for big companies to comply with the emissions.
That's been the big criticism.
Yeah.
So how do we get people to go beyond the need to be financially incentivized and to actually care?
Well, care. I mean, you're talking about corporations. They don't care about
I'm
anything
a
but
dreamer.
the bottom line. That's what they are set up to do.
I keep thinking that what we need to do is personally be aware, think about our carbon emissions, and maybe we need carbon credits in some sense. I think we look at things in terms of money value when instead we need to add the component of carbon value. So we look at something as when we buy something or do something, we can look at it in terms of our own carbon contribution. Mm-hmm. I think that we don't do that now. There's this filter in between called money, but really it's all about carbon. You fill your tank, you're just filling it with carbon. You might say, well, it cost me $40, but what did it cost in terms of that contribution to the atmosphere?
Sure.
I was just
right. I guess that's true for everything. Anything you buy,
every time you turn
have
the
to
light
think,
on.
Okay, the packaging, how it was produced.
Well, listen to this.
The farming, all of that.
Listen to this one. The carbon footprint of making a car is greater than the footprint of using the car.
Oh, wow.
So, in some sense, we buy new vehicles, and we say, the gas mileage is better, but all that stuff that went into making the car affects...
Is that true per car?
Well, I'm just reading it on the internet.
Oh, it must be true.
Oh, absolutely.
Carbon footprint of a new car, 6 tons if you get one of these tiny little things. If you get a Ford Mondeo or something medium size, 17 tons. One of the bigger ones, Land Rover, stuff like that, 35 tons for that car.
Per car.
Wow. Yeah.
So there you are. The auto industry is buying, no doubt.
Well, and if you look up what
by the sackful,
the top 7 ways that you can reduce your carbon footprint. Number 1 is stop eating red meat. Or reduce it. That's if you can't eliminate it, reduce it.
Especially, American meat. The American meat industry, not local meats. I only eat local meat.
So
that sounds like a bumper sticker
Eat
waiting to
local
happen.
Meat. Eat your local meat.
Well, no,
So that's a very good statistic, if that's so.
Well, there are two things occurred to me, though. One is that why should somebody who has more money be allowed to pollute more? Essentially, what we're doing is we're granting some people, we all drink the same water, breathe the same air, etc., and we're granting some people the right to pollute more, to create more carbon into the atmosphere than others. But, when you really think about it, Americans are granted the right to do that in vastly larger proportion to the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
And I did some other research in case anybody wants to hear it.
We deserve it.
Our country is run by the corporations, so it makes sense that the laws would be such to support the corporations.
We love our cushy lives. So tell us what you were going to read.
Well, no, China is probably the biggest emitter, and I think that's one of the reasons the United States didn't want to join the Kyoto, because it didn't apply to China. And they said, wait a minute, China is a big one, but China said, look, we need some time to get
but
there.
Greta says the house is on fire.
Well, so China is actually doing quite a bit now.
Yeah.
Let's see. I found something somewhere. I can't find it right now. But they are putting in place programs that will,
I think,
reduce emissions. Maybe not fast enough. But.
The average American, the numbers are all different depending on which thing you read, though. One says that we use 27 tons a year CO2, average American. Some other things I read, it was 16 tons. The average world use, is 4 tons.
Per capita.
So if we're 20 tons and the average is 4, then who's the problem?
We're above average.
We're world hogs.
Americans are above average.
And I hate to say this, I did my own carbon footprint. There's a number of places, if you want to do them, you can go to footprintcalculator.org or nature.org has one.
And I noticed that they not only have the calculator, but they also have a resource for you to buy credits or whatever.
You can volunteer to buy credits.
Oh, personal carbon credits.
Yeah. I came out. I don't know if I should say my number.
Okay, we'll help you get brave.
Shame.
30 tons.
Wow.
I know. 30 tons.
The average American is 27, you said?
Yeah, well, different numbers. But
I guess you're above average.
Say 27.
Wow.
No, and I'm actually 35% better than most other people. Believe it or not.
You were saying before the show, homeless Americans.
Yeah.
What?
Give us that stat.
Well, homeless Americans use 8.5 tons, and as opposed to the world average of 4. So a homeless person actually uses twice as much.
In America.
And you can say, how can that be?
How can that be?
Well, what they say is that there are a lot of services that a homeless person gets that aren't counted into their... one of the big things is food, believe it or not.
Well, yeah.
I thought... you get more, I eat a lot of vegetables. I said, that's going to keep me down. But actually, eating a lot of vegetables actually throws you higher.
Wait, we can't eat anything now. No meat, no veg?
Nothing.
Wow.
Can
we breathe?
Breatharians.
Oh, dear.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, it does tell you that we are actually in a very serious situation, and we have yet to actually take it seriously.
Right.
And so we have to change whether we like it or not.
So back to, I just found that thing. China is actually putting, of course they're going to do it in stringent ways. They're going to force their companies to comply. Anyway, they are putting stuff into, too late perhaps, but they're finally coming around to... realizing that their situation is kind of untenable, and the price of a ton of carbon, a share that was being sold at auction in California in 2017 was $14 a ton. That's how much the carbon credits are.
So let's see, what was yours? 27.
20. What you mean? What do I have to pay to buy? It's been a failure. I don't know right now, but one of the criticism has in Europe, it's been a failure. They distributed too many carbon credits, so that so that the market for trading them dropped precipitously. So that
they were too cheap.
Too cheap. That's right. And they made that mistake. Now, whether they're going to repeat that mistake or have repeated, I don't know. But it's tricky. I'm pointing out that it's not that straightforward.
Yeah. Give us a call, won't you, if you have any knowledge at all about carbon trading and cap and trade and carbon usage or carbon emissions or carbon dioxide emissions or greenhouse gas, what you do. I mean, let's talk about that. What are we all doing to cut back on our emissions? 415-663-8492. Give us a call.
We're at a disadvantage here because we don't really have adequate public transportation. I think I would have done better on my carbon credit, my carbon footprint if I
had a bus to take.
If I had some public transportation or even carpooled here.
Well, yeah, it takes more time. It takes being more organized, and we're in such fast-paced lives. We think that's not possible, but everything's possible if we look at it, address it, and take it in baby steps if necessary. Make the change over time, but at least start moving towards that change.
Well, if you only have 12 years before, as Greta says, there's going to be this tipping point.
So we should just party like it's 1999?
Baby steps to me.
Is not fast enough,
Not enough. Yeah, right.
Well, if anything can help, let's encourage each other to at least don't just throw up your hands, but do attempt to try.
I was reading recently that, there are these large funds that own most of the stock on the market, like the California Teachers Retirement Fund. I mean, this is trillions of dollars, and they are getting together. And they're meeting with the CEOs and of large companies. They're saying, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And they're sort of putting their feet to the fire, and they're requiring them to come up with global warming type plans, remediation. Yeah, I know. So it's not all. If the people that have the clout start getting together and start really, I'm not going to have the same effect on a CEO as the guy that.
Well,
as a pension fund.
Yes.
I know somebody who owns a large amount of land in the Gualala area, specifically to maintain a population of trees. And right across the river, they are clear cutting the trees for the lumber industry.
I find that I find that not believable, to be honest with you.
What part?
The part of clear cutting in Sonoma County. I happen to have a relative who was in that business.
If you're listening, you can call in and help us understand.
Getting a cutting permit is just like getting a logging permit is like pulling teeth in Sonoma County.
Well,
incredibly hard.
I heard that they were after him. They wanted to cut his trees. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't. That's all I can tell you.
I'm sorry to bring that.
But anyway, so what happens is by owning this land covered in trees, people can pay him.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's something, what's his name? John, local Nicasio farmer, or he owns a big piece of land, let's say. He's talking about the carbon, what do we call it? I've forgotten, the word's gone. It's like a carbon
bank.
Offset. It absorbs and retains carbon in the soil.
Oh, okay.
If you look after your land, I guess. I don't know if you have to do anything. So this means that large landowners will be paid more. So great. Okay. Meanwhile,
even in our own, here in West Marin,
give us a call if you know about anything to do with that.
We're surrounded by trees, and there's so many people who have gardens and grow their own vegetables and all of this, and these are the kind of things that people need to do everywhere. Is plant more plants is one way to help.
Let some of it just stay around. And don't spray, for heaven's sake. Okay. We have a caller. Hi, caller. You are on the air. What's your name, please? And please, keep it clean.
My name is Sally, and
Yeah,
it's carbon sequestering.
Carbon sequestering. Thank you very
Sally.
much.
And other than that, I just don't. The whole thing sounds like a big fat smoke screen to me.
Right. I know.
I guess
lets
that's
people.
a pun in some way.
Yeah. But yeah, people continue to get away with, dumping stuff into the atmosphere because they have the money to pay someone off. It's
Yeah, it doesn't seem like an effective incentive for the corporations.
right.
It's just the cost of doing business. That
And also, it's not
Right.
something that people are that aware of unless they're really making a concerted effort. I'd say most people in the United States are completely unaware of this.
Right.
Something they can take into their own hands. Because most people are just trying to get along.
Right. Just to survive, they might have more than one job.
They might have more than one job, and they're just dealing with so much in their own lives. And then, depending on what your economic bracket is, I'm still so upset about what they call food deserts, and it's kind of integrated into your topic or entirely off topic. But the food in those, few supermarkets that are kind of like prisons when you go into them.
Right.
The food is just like really terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say that we can't eat, or that not that we can't, but that eating vegetables incurs like too much of a carbon output, I don't know.
I didn't say too much.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not quoting you correctly, but I just don't. I'd love more definition of that, or a breakdown, or as all the news pundits say, let's unpack this.
Right.
Which really drives me nuts. Okay.
Well, certainly the poor are, as always, suffering more than middle class, if what's left of the middle class and above. So, yes, food deserts. So you have to drive or you have to take a bus to get to a place where you can actually get food that's
like to get
actually good for you.
A liter of soda pop.
Right.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, yeah.
Those markets, they're terrifying.
Yeah. Awful.
And you're treated sort of, just the way they're designed, you're treated sort of like when you go into some of them. I've been into a few, I'm not saying every single one, but these sort of markets where you go through a turnstile, and then you kind of can't, go back out the way you came in, and it's really...
but aren't we really... aren't we the culprits?
Yes.
When you say the corporations, we support the corporations every day by buying the products that they make.
Yes.
Some of that stuff we can't do without, but a lot of it, we have no business buying.
We'd have to unravel what small companies have been bought up by what corporations, and that just takes. Again goes back to, you can take the time to learn that and make these informed decisions. But how many people are doing that?
True. It's true.
Maybe it should be taught. Part of the curriculum.
Well, yeah, civil involvement.
Yeah.
Engagement.
Absolutely should.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Shelley, I interrupted you, but...
Oh, no, it's all right. I have a hard time every time Stephen says, we just can't live without that. Whatever the thing is.
I say that?
Yeah, you say that, and I think, well, maybe we can. Can we look at that? What would life be like if we had to live without certain things that we currently take for granted just because they're there?
Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe I was being facetious.
You never know with you, do you, Stephen?
Oh dear, this show is becoming a psychodrama.
Count that I assume I'm being facetious, and then...
Okay.
Well, thank you. I'm going to let someone else call in
Thank you, Sally.
Offer their opinions. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Well, I do.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yes, do give us a call, 415-663-8492. Tell us what you know about the carbon trading scheme. I won't say scam. No, because I think it was put in place by people who think they are doing the right thing. KWMR, this is KWMR 90.5, Point Radio Station 89.9. In Bolinas, we have a caller. Hang on, wait a minute, caller. Just hang on for a while. KWMR is supported by West County Media, a full-service creative agency for growing brands. West County Media is the sponsor of the WordPress West and North Bay Tech and Entrepreneurship Community Meetups. Information by phone at 415-895-WEST or online at westcountymedia.com. And we're also supported by, of course, our wonderful Calendar Club members and Rancho Nicasio, a historic roadhouse featuring live music Friday and Saturday nights and Sunday afternoons on the town square in Nicasio. Offering daily lunch and dinner and weekend brunch. Inquiries about weddings, private parties, and corporate events available online at ranchonicasio.com. That's ranchonicasio.com. And we're also supported by Osmosis Day Spa Sanctuary, offering massages, organic facials, and the Japanese cedar enzyme bath. Osmosis is located near the Sonoma coast, just up Highway 1, and features 5 acres of gardens as well as local and organic meals. The spa menu, online booking, and info about the surrounding area can be found at osmosis.com. And we have a caller on the line. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please?
My name is Fred.
Fred, good day.
Yes, good day.
Thanks for calling in, Fred.
I have a comment about cap and trade. Sounds like a high school graduation. You know, it doesn't work. Dollars and government does not work. They're going to create some Byzantine thing that nobody understands. So it's up to the people to change their ways. I'm looking at the EPA pie chart here, okay, from the U.S. government. 29% of the carbon emissions comes from transportation, 28% from electricity, and 22% from industry. That's 80%. Okay, so the only thing that was net carbon positive was land use and forestry, because obviously, you know, trees like carbon, they take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. So what we need to do is, if you cannot get solar put on your roof, you have village energy centers, either solar or wind. I know that the guy from Metallica got Marin County approval to put a wind system in off of Lucas Valley Road there for the neighborhood. So you get clean energy to start with, so you get rid of that electricity component, 28%. And then for transportation, you get electric cars, and then you run it off the sun, and they have no emissions. And then for the industry, you do car sharing, which is Elon Musk is predicting. You know, his timetables are probably a little bit short, but in the near future, you'll get your iPhone out and request to go somewhere. A car will come and pick you up and take you there, and nobody will be driving it.
Yeah, we need 5G for that one.
Excuse me?
I said we need 5G for that one, for that plan.
Well, of course. Well, so?
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying we don't need their own cars.
Right. That's true.
You know, you could have, you know, Uber is getting involved in this because, you know, they obviously, you know, see self-driving cars as being the future. And Manhattan is charging people to $45 to come in to Manhattan with their car because of gridlock. So, you have to change. Everybody does not have to own a car, and if you do own a car, you put it into the taxi pool.
Good idea.
I have an electric car, and I don't use it that much.
Uh-huh.
So what Steven said about all the tons that goes to create a car, well, you could be making money off of it. You could be an Uber driver and be sitting at home watching TV.
Yeah. Let's see. So it still takes a lot of carbon, no doubt, to a lot of emissions to build the Tesla, and especially the lithium batteries, which are the lithium is mined by slaves.
Cobalt.
Well, that'll change. That technology will change. It'll get better. Right now, Tesla does produce the most efficient batteries, and so that's another thing that we need to do. We need to get off the PG&E. They create wildfires. There are ugly wires everywhere. Why do we need those?
How are you charging your car?
Power walls. 2 power walls run a house.
Ah, excellent.
So you have your solar cells feeding your power walls, and you're independent. You don't have to worry about all these down power lines around West Marin and never having, consistent electricity.
Yeah, off the grid certainly is attractive. It's still an option for really the upper middle class, though. This isn't something that you're going to spread around across the nation. It's a considerable investment to be off the grid unless you really have the skills and the knowledge, etc., to pull it off for yourself.
Well, you need to give incentives. So what happened was Tesla's not selling cars right now because the $7,500 tax credit is gone. In the infinite wisdom of the U.S. government, they only made 200,000 units available. So Tesla sold them all before the end of last year. Everybody's rushing to get these $7,500 tax credits. Now they're not there. They're not selling cars. So you need, instead of this cap and trade complication, and it sounds like the tax system is so complicated. No wonder the rich people, don't pay taxes because there's so many loopholes, and it's so complicated. So you need to make things simple.
I can't help but think though that when we talk about driverless cars, etc., we're still in the old paradigm. We need to the business of personal transportation. I mean, if the planet is, if we really mean business, okay, and we're using the Americans are producing 20 tons of carbon, and the average world carbon is 4. If we really need to dramatically reduce the average carbon use for an American, we cannot look at things as with Band-Aids. The old paradigm, everyone gets personal transportation. I think that in the future that is not going to be that isn't the future, unless you want the water up to your knees. I mean, what's it going to be? What are we willing to give up? Can we? Now, if there was good public transportation, I would have taken the bus down here. It would be simple as that. And interestingly enough, in third world countries where it's changing, by the way, but 40 years ago, when they didn't have a lot of personal transportation, they evolved some really positive, easy, simple ways of getting around. And those things are disappearing now because they're getting prosperous enough now, too. No. What
are we willing to give up?
It's just dumbfounding.
Yeah, but then we have an efficient system out of Point Reyes into San Rafael. The stagecoach runs empty most of the time.
Don't look to transit agencies to solve the problem. It's not going to happen. We can't even build a train from L.A. to San Francisco. Now Governor Newsom is going to build it from Modesto to Bakersfield. Yeah, a lot of people are going to use that, right? Government is not the solution.
No.
Okay, so what happened with the Chinese is they started choking on their own pollution,
Right.
and that's why we have Spare the Air days in California. 30% of our pollution comes from China because of the westerlies.
Mm.
Okay, so now they have helped. Elon Musk is building a factory as we speak in Shanghai, and they're going electric. They said no more petrochemical cars on the highways after 2030, I believe it was, and they have to make progress. They have benchmarks for 2025 because they've choked on their own.
Volvo has made the same commitment. They're going all electric. I don't know when. We're
Some of the European countries are going that way, yeah, sure.
Denmark produces over 50% of their electricity is done by wind.
Yeah.
And we could do that here, too.
Of course.
I mean, we need to have government support, though.
Well, that's the advantage that China has is that it's not an oligarchy, it's a dictatorship, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean,
so they can make rules and enforce them, and people have to go along with it, or they go to jail. That's not going to work. That's not going to happen here. I could see China being much cleaner than the U.S. in 50 years' time.
Well, their biggest
democracy is the problem.
Their biggest issue is the coal-fired plants.
Yeah,
I mean,
coal should be banned. You don't need coal anymore.
Oh, we love coal in the U.S.
It's very dirty. You shouldn't allow coal. Everything should go to the sun runs the earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we get our energy from.
Okay, Fred. So we want to change. We got these 12 years, and we need some drastic changes. How are we going to get those?
Government subsidies. You have to subsidize people's behavior. Otherwise, they won't, tax credits, basically, is what I'm talking about.
Well, this is how the wealthy, though, avoid paying taxes, by all these tax credits.
What?
Isn't this how the wealthy avoid paying taxes? Buy a car and get a tax credit.
We're all wealthy on paper. We're the wealthiest country in the world, and our lifestyle sucks.
So that's what I'm asking. How do we change our lifestyle so that we can make some drastic changes in the amount of
individually?
Yeah, but what do we do?
Well, I think
I told you.
Oh, okay.
Easy. Okay, Fred. We're just having a discussion.
Take a breath.
So we had talked earlier about,
and you get electric cars, and then you're 2/3 of the way there.
Okay.
Right, and stopping before we purchase things anywhere. And thinking about...
we're too big consumers. Who needs to have 3 cars, 4 cars?
Right.
True.
And then, I like to suggest that people take it a step further beyond not making a particular purchase to actually starting to reach out to... And I keep saying this, I have yet to do it myself, but I have targeted one... product that I want to do this. I buy a creamer. It's a coconut-based creamer in a little carton container, and it has a little plastic spout on the side. Totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
And so I want to reach out to the company and say, hey, I like your product, but please remove that plastic spout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you know what? I was going to suggest that Albert Strauss put that on his half and half. Because it drips all over the place.
Well, so what are we willing to give up? Are we willing to get out a towel and wipe up the drip, or are we willing to...
You mentioned red meat. I'm looking at this EPA pie chart. Agriculture, 9%.
Not that much. Not as much.
Residential construction, 12%. The big 3 is transportation, electricity, in industry.
And I think that airlines are not included in any of these cap and trade things, I think. And in the EU, I think they're starting, I think I read somewhere this morning that they're going after the airlines to join their cap and trade thing. Airline flights are huge polluters. And, of course, the U.S. military, the largest single source of pollution in the world. The U.S. military, there is no mention of...
How can we incentivize the U.S. military?
Let's not forget war in terms of...
well, sure, yeah. Well, entails all that.
I mean, the EPA should have regulation over military bases around the world. We don't have to have such a big military anyhow. Well, that's another story.
That's another program.
But if you do the transportation, you cut down consumption, that cuts down the industry, and you cut down the electricity, that's 81%.
That's good.
So I'm just curious.
79% of the pollution.
Very good.
Anyhow.
Shelley, you had something to say.
Thank you, Fred.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling in, man. That's great.
There is a solution, but it ain't going to come from government.
Yeah, right. No, it has to come from public willingness, and that's...
People have to change their ways.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Have a clean day.
You too, Fred.
I'm going to drive back to Tamales.
Keep it clean, Fred. That's right.
Cheers.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you to Fred. The number is 415-663-8492. Give us a call, won't you, about carbon emissions and trading and cap and trade and what we can do to help, because obviously, as Fred said, government is not the answer, especially right now.
Right. Well, I was just thinking about statistics, when we look things up. When I do a search, what are the top 10 ways I can deal with climate change? I find meat at the top of the list. I didn't put it there. I'm not trying to, be a meat-eating basher person, but that's what I find when I do a search. So I'm curious about searches, like maybe I find something different on my searches because of my interests than someone else might.
Of course.
Yeah, so
if you're
that
Googling,
just
of course,
right.
That's what Google does.
So that's what sort of just occurred to me in this moment is that
try a different search engine instead of Google.
Right.
DuckDuckGo is a pretty good one.
.go.
Duck.
Oh, duck.
And there used to be one called
cute.
Dogpile. I don't know if that still exists. They were an independent search engine.
Yeah.
So, talking about government, though, there's an article on the 21st. When was that? Yesterday?
A couple days ago.
New York City making steps to against climate change. They are requiring their tallest buildings to slash their emissions through energy-efficient building upgrades. It just passed through New York Senate, I think. There's a suite of 10 bills, the New York Climate Mobilization Act, and it's called the Dirty Buildings Law. Those over 25,000 feet? Wait a minute. 25,000 feet?
No.
Anyway, apparently New York City's worst polluter is skyscrapers because they use so much power to keep them cold, keep them warm, just all those lights on all day and some of them all night. I'm not so sure that happens anymore, but 50,000 of New York City's 1 million buildings are responsible for 30% of the city's emissions. So it requires the tallest buildings to cut their emissions 40% by 2030. And over 80% before 2050. Is Manhattan still going to be above water then? I don't know. So there's one government, just one little place in the world that is taking a measure against glass and steel. Glass and steel, there's no insulation.
I'm just sitting here.
Go ahead.
I'm just sitting here and listening to you talking about is Manhattan still going to be, I just find it impossible to believe that we're in this situation.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem. I think for most humans, we don't want to acknowledge it because it's too scary.
No. Hasn't really impacted us here yet, but in certain places in the world, they are feeling it already.
Right. I was just thinking about our local little piece of the planet. And what are some ways that we could do things differently out here in West Marin? I mean, like I said, we already are ahead of the game because there's so many trees here. And
Well, if we were incorporated, there could be local laws passed. We could have a local carbon tax. If you use more than everyone has an allowance of emissions, and if you use more emissions than that, you pay for it, and that goes to things like community services, or people who are not using as much get some of that money. Perhaps we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please?
Okay. I'm Margaret Gaffney.
Hi, Margaret.
And the Gaffneys have been out here in West Marin for 61 years.
Aha.
I'm going to say three things. Find a way to incorporate the school children from tiny ages, from the daycare kids through the elementary, through the high schools, about growing your own food, eating locally.
Excellent.
And there went all the trucks that have to burn up gas or diesel to bring in food.
Good call. Yeah.
That's one. Number two, carpool for every trip you take out that you possibly can. It isn't one person, the driver, driving into San Francisco for a medical appointment. It isn't. There's some creative way that any time we leave here to go to Novato, to go to San Francisco, go with a buddy. Go with two buddies, better yet.
Make a plan.
Make a plan. And
the internet could help with that, by the way.
It's three people if you're going to take a car. Number three, recycle everything. It can turn into art. It can turn into daycare art. It can turn into middle school art. It can turn into high school art.
It can go to the thrift store.
Yeah, the thrift store. Buy all of our clothes at the thrift store.
Yep, that's what I do. Yeah.
Okay, that's my three.
Well, thank you so much. I love that.
I think we have to do the little things. We have to stop being hopeless.
But I especially like that you started out with teaching our children.
Exactly.
It's so important.
And well, just like the song said.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Margaret.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Through the show, it's a great show.
Oh,
thanks.
You. Appreciate it.
Now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
In some sense, though, it seems like the children are trying to teach us.
Yes.
Right.
I think there are a lot of children who are aware of what their future is going to look like.
And if you don't know who Greta Thunberg is, please look her up and catch her TED Talk. She's very inspirational. So if you're uncertain about how important this topic is and you want to know more, please listen to Greta.
Greta Thunberg. Is she Danish?
Swedish.
Yeah. And 14 years old, I think?
I think she's 16 now.
Yeah.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
I think she's 16.
Oh, she's going to get her driver's license.
She speaks at world forums on this topic.
Amazing.
She's inspirational.
She walks her talk. She takes trains and takes a long time to get places, but she goes by train and doesn't fly. And one of the points that she often makes is that pretty much everyone in this room with me flew here.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
No, she's charismatic. She's inspirational.
And so clear,
Yes,
her
very clear.
points are clear and direct.
What a writer, too. So, she can really write. People, when she first started her nemesis, they accused her she didn't write that herself, but she does write that.
Well, we live in America where we don't have an awesome education system like when my dad was growing up. He was very well educated through the public education system, and it's just been chipped away at over the years.
Yeah, well, we don't want educated children because that would create an educated voter bloc, and then they'll want politicians who are actually going to...
You know, I would say that, but you know, I'm encouraged because...
wait, am I a misanthropist? Yeah.
Well, what about, wait a second, when they had the last shooting, what was the name of the high school? Those kids came out, and it was like, wow.
Yeah.
I was a little hopeful about education.
Yeah.
Well, it does happen.
They'll be in government at some point, some of those guys and gals, as we used to say in the old days.
Yeah.
That has been Let's Talk. Thank you, everyone, for calling in. That was an interesting show. I'm sorry we're not... let me just apologize for my own ignorance on most of these topics.
Hey, I'm right there with you, Paul. I really hope people don't think we come here knowing everything, because we don't.
I think we're all just learning as we go along, and we really appreciate that people call in and help us out.
Next week is going to be joke week, joke day.
Joke day. Oh, next week we start our new time. We'll be on at noon, from noon to 1 next Thursday. We begin. So it's lunch hour time. We'll get the lunch traffic. This has been Let's Talk. Thank you to everybody listening and calling in. KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. We'll be back next week at noon on Thursday. Thank you, everybody, for listening in.